Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a really hard, critical look at how we actually spend our time in the classroom. Think about it. We put so much effort into waking up, commuting, grabbing that coffee, finding a seat, and getting our laptops all set up. But the second the lecturer actually starts speaking, well, a completely different challenge begins. We're going to examine the hidden gaps in our attention and figure out why just showing up is really only a tiny fraction of the battle.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to honestly ask yourself right now, are you actually here? Like, when you're sitting in that seat, does your physical presence truly equal mental presence? It's a deceptively simple question, right? But it hits the absolute core of our learning habits. We constantly trick ourselves into thinking that just because our body is physically occupying a chair in a room, our brain is somehow automatically downloading the material. But, as we'll see, that couldn't be further from the truth.
I want you to picture this reality, because we've all been there. You're in the lecture theater, your laptop is open right in front of you, the lecturer is up at the front, passionately teaching the day's material, but you're checking your phone. Maybe you're firing off a text in a group chat, mindlessly scrolling through TikTok, or quietly plotting out lunch plans with the person next to you. It's the quintessential modern lecture hall experience, and honestly, it happens so automatically that we barely even register we're doing it. We feel like we're part of the class, but in reality, our minds are literally miles away.
Which brings us to Section 1, the attendance illusion, physical presence versus mental engagement. So, the crucial point is that just sitting in a room for an hour does not guarantee any actual learning has taken place.
You can sit there for the entire duration of the class and still miss almost everything of value. Let's break down exactly how this happens with the anatomy of a distraction. At 0 seconds, you decide to just glance at your phone. It's just a quick look, right? No big deal. But at the 30-second mark, while your eyes are down, the lecturer explains one vital, foundational step in an equation or introduces a brand new concept. By the time you hit the 1-minute mark and look back up, you've missed the link. The next part doesn't quite make sense. You start feeling lost. And what do we do when we feel lost? We retreat. We check our phones again. By the 5-minute mark, you're completely derailed. You are physically in the room, sure, but mentally you are somewhere else entirely.
In this domino effect, it is incredibly punishing, particularly in high-stakes subjects. Think about fields like engineering, mathematics, and physics. They're built entirely on cumulative concepts. The ideas literally stack on top of each other, kind of like a giant tower of building blocks. If you miss just one single step during that 30-second phone check, the next 5 minutes become completely impossible to follow. The foundation is just gone, and the rest of the lecture essentially turns into white noise.
Moving right along to Section 2, the wrong question, measuring the right metrics for success.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how, especially after a really tough semester, we obsess over the completely wrong things. When things don't go our way, our first instinct is to ask, how many hours did I cram before the test? We obsess over cramming and study hours. But the source material challenges us to look at this totally differently. A much better question to ask is, how engaged was I during the semester? We completely ignore our baseline engagement levels, somehow forgetting that learning is a continuous, ongoing process, not just some frantic event that happens the night before an exam.
To figure out your actual baseline, you need what's called the engagement checklist. Think back to your last class as we go through this. Were you actually listening to the words being spoken? Take a breath and ask yourself, were you actively following the lecturer's reasoning from point A to point B? Were you taking useful notes, or just mindlessly transcribing everything? And perhaps most importantly, were you asking yourself if you actually understood what was being explained? I'll pause for a second here. Really evaluate your own habits. If you're answering no to these questions, then all those hours of studying right before the test, you're basically trying to build a house on an empty foundation. Let's shift gears a bit to Section 3, the professionalism pivot, training for the future workplace. Because honestly, this isn't just about passing a midterm. The stakes are so much higher than that. And this brilliantly illustrates the real-world consequences of our classroom behavior. Think about mapping your current university habits onto a future workplace scenario. Imagine you're in a critical team leader briefing. Would you pull out your phone and start scrolling TikTok? What about a highly collaborative project meeting? Would you sit there wearing your noise-canceling headphones? Or imagine a colleague is giving a major presentation to your entire department. Would you continuously chat with the person sitting next to you? No way. Of course not. Those behaviors would be completely unacceptable, right?
Which leads us to a truly profound realization from the source text. Professionalism does not suddenly begin on the day you graduate. It's not some magic switch you flip the moment they hand you a diploma. You are already practicing it right now. Professionalism is a muscle. How you behave in lectures, in tutorials, in meetings, and during group work today, that is the active training ground for how you're going to operate as a professional tomorrow.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, the 5-minute test, a simple tool for real-time correction.
So we need a practical, immediate solution that empowers you to combat this distraction trap the very moment you feel it happening. Here is the absolute core diagnostic tool you need to memorize. Every now and then, right in the middle of a lecture, ask yourself this exact question. If someone asked me what was explained in the last 5 minutes, could I explain it? Let the weight of that sink in for a second. If you can't explain it, you aren't actually present.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an actionable cycle we call the engagement loop. It's incredibly straightforward. Step 1, you prompt yourself with that 5-minute question. Step 2, you answer honestly, seriously, don't lie to yourself. And step 3, if the answer is no, you use that realization as a trigger to immediately bring your attention right back to the room. It's brilliant because it puts the power of real-time self-correction entirely in your hands.
Now, it is absolutely crucial to understand the distinction between these two states. On one hand, we have occasionally losing concentration. Guys, that is completely normal. You don't need to be perfectly focused every single second of every single day. Nobody is capable of that. But on the other hand, being physically present but mentally absent for an entire lecture, that is a highly damaging habit. We want to accept the normal human wandering of the mind, but aggressively avoid checking out completely.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take into your very next class. Next time you walk into a lecture hall, don't just ask, "Am I here?" Ask yourself, "Am I actually engaged?" Because as the source material so perfectly puts it, attendance merely puts you in the room. But engagement is what actually gives you the opportunity to learn, to master your material, and to become the true professional you are aiming to be.